You know that moment when your life feels like a house of cards. One wrong move could bring it all crashing down. That was me, standing on the edge of losing everything, until I decided to play my own hand. This is the story of how I turned betrayal into freedom, and how one lie changed everything. Melissa and I had been married for 8 years. We first crossed paths at this swanky fundraiser for animal shelters. It sounds like a rom-com setup, I know. She was standing by the dessert table, holding a tiny piece of cheesecake like it was some rare artifact. Up a conversation. And what can I say? Sparks flew. Fast forward to now, and we've built this life together that on the surface looks picture perfect. Big suburban house, vacations to places like Hawaii, dinners with friends where everyone laughs a little too loudly after a few glasses of wine. She was my rock, my partner in crime, or at least that's what I thought. Everything changed last Saturday. Melissa had planned this incredible surprise party for my 40th birthday. I mean, she went all out. The house was packed. Friends, family, even people I hadn't seen in years. There were caterers, elaborate decorations, and a live band playing hits from the 90s. Melissa floated around the room like a queen, making sure everyone was taken care of. She had this effortless way of hosting, smiling and laughing with everyone. If hosting were an art, Melissa would have been a master. Then came the moment that flipped my world upside down. After the cake was cut and the happy birthday chorus faded, Melissa stepped up to the microphone with this sly grin on her face. "All right, everybody," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "I've got one more surprise for Michael. A little video I put together of some of our best moments." The crowd erupted in cheers, and I'll admit, I got a little choked up. It was such a thoughtful thing to do. Or so I believed at the time. The video started sweetly enough. Were clips from our wedding, vacations we'd taken, silly little moments at home. But about 5 minutes in, the screen flickered, and suddenly there she was. Melissa, but not with me. She was kissing another man. At first, I didn't get it. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing. Maybe it was a joke, a poorly timed gag. But then reality hit me like a freight train. This wasn't staged, this was real. The room fell into a heavy silence. All the laughter, the noise, clinking glasses, it all evaporated. Melissa's face drained of color as she lunged for the remote. "Oh my God, no, that's not the right video," she cried, fumbling to shut it off. But it was too late. The damage was done. I just stood there, frozen, while everyone else stared at the screen, at me, at her. The image of Melissa kissing some guy I didn't know was burned into my brain. My mom covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. My buddy Tyler muttered "what the hell" under his breath. Melissa finally managed to stop the video, but the silence that followed was deafening. Something inside me snapped without even thinking. I walked up to the TV, grabbed the remote, and turned the video back on. "No, let's watch the rest," I said, my voice calm and cold. Wouldn't want to miss the highlight reel. Melissa rushed toward me, her voice frantic. "Michael, don't. Please. Let me explain." But I wasn't having it. My hand stayed steady as I pressed play. The video rolled on, showing Melissa and this guy, Jason, as I'd later learned, at a cozy restaurant. They were laughing, holding hands, looking like a couple straight out of a rom-com. Then my eyes caught the date stamp in the corner, and my stomach turned. It was from 3 weeks ago. The scene shifted to what looked like someone's apartment. It didn't matter whose, they were on a couch, tangled up in each other, kissing like a couple of love-struck teenagers. Her blouse was partially undone, and just when I thought I couldn't take any more, the video ended. It didn't need to go further. The message was crystal clear. My wife had been cheating on me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Is this for real?" Melissa's best friend Olivia looked like she was going to faint. My mom stood up quietly and walked out, her expression caught somewhere between pity and disgust. Melissa grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Michael, I swear, it's swear, not what it looks like." I turned to her, fury boiling just under the surface. "Not what it looks like," I hissed, "because it looks like you've been screwing around with him." I jabbed a finger at the screen, frozen on the damning image of them on the couch. She opened her mouth, probably to throw out some excuse, but I wasn't interested. "Who is he, Melissa? How long has this been going on?" Her composure crumbled. It was a mistake. A stupid, one-time mistake. One-time mistakes don't make it into home videos. I snapped. Who filmed this? How the hell did it end up here? She looked like she might collapse. I don't know, she said weakly. It must have been a mix-up. A mix-up? I let out a bitter laugh. So you're telling me you accidentally added your affair to my birthday video? That's your excuse? Her eyes darted around the room, desperate for an escape. Michael, please, can we just talk about this in private? Why? So you can lie to me without witnesses. I gestured toward the room full of our stunned friends and family. No, Melissa, you wanted everyone here to celebrate our best moments. Let's give them the whole story. Melissa's face crumpled like paper. I wanted her to feel the humiliation, to understand what she'd done. But before I could press further, Olivia's voice sliced through the tension. Melissa, Olivia's voice was sharp, cutting through the tension like a blade. Tell me the truth. Have you been cheating on Michael? Melissa turned to face her, her lips trembling as if the weight of the question had finally hit home. Olivia. She faltered, her voice barely a whisper. Answer the question. Olivia snapped, her tone rising above the hushed murmurs of the stunned crowd. Is it true? Melissa's resolve crumbled, and her shoulders sagged. Yes, she admitted, her voice cracking. Fine, yes. I've been seeing someone. But it's not what you think. I stared at her, my chest tightening as the air seemed to thin around me. Not what I think. Then why don't you enlighten all of us, Melissa? What is it? Her breath hitched, and her tear-filled eyes darted toward me. Michael, I was lonely, she began, her voice trembling. You've been so distant lately, so consumed by work. I didn't plan for this to happen. But Jason, he was there when you weren't. The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room drilling into me, waiting for my response. She was blaming me. That's the excuse she'd chosen. You're blaming me, I asked, my voice low, dangerous. You're standing here, caught red-handed, and somehow this is my fault. No, that's not what I meant, she protested, tears streaming down her face. I'm just saying I wasn't happy, Michael. Her voice cracked under the weight of her emotions, but her tears didn't move me, not this time. So instead of talking to me, I said through clenched teeth, you talked to him. What did Jason have that I didn't? Melissa, a more comfortable couch. Someone in the crowd let out a nervous chuckle, but I didn't flinch. Melissa's face contorted with anger, the guilt that had consumed her moments before now, morphing into something more defensive. You don't get it, do you? She snapped, her voice rising. You're so wrapped up in your own world that you never notice what I need. I didn't plan this, Michael. It just happened. It just happened. It just happened. I repeated with a bitter laugh, shaking my head. God, you have a way with words. Do you use that line with Jason too, after you accidentally ended up in his bed? Her face flushed a deep red, and for a second, I thought she might actually slap me. But before she could say a word, I turned to the crowd. Well, I think this party's over. Thanks for coming, everyone. My voice was cold, final. Melissa and I have a lot to discuss. With that, I walked out of the house, leaving her standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of her perfect little soiree. But I wasn't done with her. Not by a long shot. I drove straight to my office, downtown, needing somewhere, anywhere. That wasn't the house we shared. The idea of being there, surrounded by memories of our life together, made my stomach turn. The office was empty, as it should have been on a Saturday night. I poured myself a drink, something stiff, and stood at the window staring out at the city lights as the evening's events played on repeat in my mind. Melissa, her tears, her excuses, the nerve of her to pin this on me, to blame me for her betrayal, and that damn video. It haunted me. The way she smiled at Jason, that easy, carefree smile she hadn't given me in years. Her claim that it was a one-time mistake felt like salt in a wound, a half-truth I couldn't bring myself to believe. More to the story, and I was going to find it. The next morning, I returned home. Her car was in the driveway, but the house was quiet. When I stepped inside, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, clutching a coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess. She looked up as I entered. Guilt and fear etched into her face. We need to talk, I said, my tone flat. She nodded. her voice barely audible. Michael, I'm so sorry. Save it. I tossed my keys onto the counter and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Here's how this is going to work. You're going to tell me everything. Everything. No lies, no sugarcoating. Her hands trembled. She hesitated. I already told you. Not enough. I cut her off, my voice sharp. Who filmed that video? And how the hell did it end up in the montage? She let out a shaky breath. It was Jason. He filmed it. He thought it would be funny to keep a record of our time together. Funny. I barked out a humorless laugh. Is it funny now, Melissa? No. God, no! She cried, her voice breaking. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I don't even know how it ended up in the montage. I must have uploaded the wrong file when I was editing. You were putting together a video of our happy moments. You thought it'd be a great idea to keep your affair footage on the same device. That about right? She winced, her face crumpling. I didn't think. No kidding, I spat. How long has this been going on, Melissa? She hesitated again, her eyes darting away from mine. 6 months, she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. 6 months. My chest felt like it was being crushed. 6 months, I repeated, my voice heavy with disbelief, while I was busting my ass at work, paying for this house, these vacations, this life you wanted. You were sneaking around with Jason. It wasn't like that, she said, her voice rising defensively. Jason was just... He was there for me when you weren't. Hey, listen, I scoffed, shaking my head. That's your justification. You wanted someone to listen, so you found a replacement for your husband. It wasn't about replacing you, she cried, her voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to happen. But you've been so distant, Michael. So caught up in your work and your own life. I felt like I didn't exist anymore. And instead of telling me how you felt, I said coldly, you jumped into bed with Jason. That mature, Melissa. Her face hardened, her guilt giving way to anger. I'm not the only one at fault here, Michael. You've been so obsessed with work, so focused on your career, that you forgot about us. You forgot about me. Her words stung, but I refused to let her twist the situation. You don't get to play the victim, Melissa. You didn't just cheat. You lied to me, to our friends, to everyone. And now you want to blame me for what you did. Melissa sat silently, her eyes glued to the table as though it might offer her an escape. She didn't say a word. I dragged a chair from across the room and sat down, staring her down. We're not done here, I said, my voice cutting through the stillness. I want every detail. How it started, where it happened, and everything in between. Don't skip a single thing, she hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she avoided my gaze. Finally, with a shaky breath, she began to speak, each word more reluctant than the last. She painted a picture of something that started out innocently enough. Late nights at work, collaboration on projects, and eventually drinks after hours. But somewhere along the way, the boundaries blurred. Texts turned into secret rendezvous, work lunches morphed into stolen afternoons. By the time I realized I was in too deep, she said, it was already too late. I never wanted to hurt you, Michael, she said, her voice trembling, as tears welled up in her eyes. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I leaned back, crossing my arms as I let out a bitter laugh. Didn't mean for it to happen, I said, my tone icy. It sure looks like you meant it every single time you went to see him. She broke into tears again, but they didn't stir any sympathy in me. Not this time. I stood up, leaning over the table as I spoke. Here's how this is going to go, I said firmly. You're going to pack a bag and leave tonight. I don't care where you go, Jason's place, a hotel, your mom's house. But you're not staying here. Her head snapped up, panic flashing in her tear-streaked eyes. Michael, please, she began, her voice cracking with desperation. No, I cut her off sharply, my tone final. You don't get to beg anymore, Melissa. You made your choice. Now you'll live with it. Her protest fizzled out as she sank back into her chair, crying quietly. I didn't wait around to console her. I walked out of the room, leaving her to deal with the wreckage of what she'd done. My hands trembled with anger, but I kept it together. Losing control wouldn't help. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. When Melissa finally left that night, the house felt hollow, like a shell. The quiet wasn't comforting. It was oppressive, filled with the echoes of her betrayal. Sleep didn't come. Instead, I spent the night combing through her things, searching for something. anything that would give me the full story. I found more than I'd bargained for. Her laptop was my first stop. She'd logged out, but recovering her files was easier than I expected. Melissa wasn't as tech-savvy as she liked to believe. Buried in a folder labeled Work Docs was a collection of photos, texts, and videos that told a much darker story. The pictures were the first blow. Each one hit me like a punch to the gut. Melissa in a dimly lit hotel room, laughing with Jason. Melissa on a beach, his hand on her thigh. Melissa wearing lingerie I'd never seen before, posing like she didn't have a care in the world. Texts were even worse. At first, they were flirtatious, playful, harmless enough to a casual observer. But then they grew more explicit. Sexting, long emotional messages about how Michael doesn't understand me. She had twisted our marriage into some tragic tale where she was the neglected wife and I was the cold, unfeeling husband who had abandoned her. That part stung more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the way she had rewritten the story of our raw life, casting me as the villain in her narrative. For a moment, I wanted to destroy everything. Her laptop, the photos, but I stopped myself. Text every video onto a flash drive. It wasn't just about divorce, it was about ensuring she couldn't spin this into something it wasn't. The next morning, I made a call. A friend who had gone through a rough divorce had recommended a lawyer, Diane, a no-nonsense professional with a reputation for being ruthless. When I explained the situation, her voice sharpened. "Bring me everything," she said, her tone brisk and efficient. "Every text, every photo, every timestamp. We'll make sure she doesn't get a dime." Melissa, of course, had no idea what was coming. She texted me that day, pleading for a conversation. I ignored her. When she called, I let it ring through to voicemail. By evening, she showed up at ring through to voicemail. The house, pacing the driveway, her phone in hand. I watched from the upstairs window, arms crossed, as she frantically paced. She looked more unhinged than I'd ever seen her. Eventually, she left. Later, I listened to her voicemail. Her voice was trembling but still laced with entitlement. "Michael, please," she said. "I know you're upset, but can we just sit down and talk? I think we can work through this. I still love you, and I know you love me too." Love. After everything she'd done, the sheer audacity almost made me laugh. I responded with a single text. "We'll talk, but only through lawyers. My lawyer will be in touch." Her reply came instantly. "A lawyer? Are you serious, Michael? Don't do this. We can fix this. Don't throw everything away over a mistake." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I wasn't the one who'd thrown everything away. She was. The next few days were a blur of meetings and preparation. Diane was relentless, poring over every detail of our lives, our finances, our assets. She assured me the evidence I'd gathered was more than enough to give me the upper hand, not just in the divorce but in controlling the narrative. "People like Melissa," Diane said, leaning back in her chair, "lie for appearances. She'll try to play the victim, twist this into something it's not. But with what you have, you can make sure the truth comes out. Don't let her dictate the story." Melissa had been right about one thing. She wasn't going to bow out quietly. If I wanted to handle this the way it needed to be handled, I'd have to be ready for whatever came next. So I decided to take things further. This wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore. It was about dismantling the facade she'd built and holding everyone involved accountable. First, I reached out to her closest friends, Olivia, Beth, and Sarah. The three of them had always been thick as thieves, sharing inside jokes over mimosas and planning elaborate weekend getaways like they were auditioning for a reality show. I figured they'd already been whispering about what had happened at the party. If anyone could spread the truth, it was them. We met at a coffee shop a few days later. As I approached the table, they looked up with guarded expression, part curiosity, part concern. Olivia was the first to speak, her voice cautious. "Michael, we've been worried. Melissa hasn't told us much, but she seems really upset." "What's going on? Upset?" I said, a bitter laugh escaping before I could stop it. "Yeah, I bet she is." I didn't hold back. I laid everything out for them, piece by piece. The photos, the text, the video. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was making sure they saw the truth. The Melissa they thought they knew was a lie. By the time I was done, their faces were pale, their mouths set in thin lines. Problem? Like you were too busy for her. She's been lying to all of you, I said bluntly. Just like she lied to me. And I'm done letting her get away with it. By the end of the week, the fallout had started. Olivia and the others stopped returning Melissa's calls. Mutual friends, once part of her carefully curated circle, began reaching out to me instead. They wanted to know what had really happened, and I didn't sugarcoat it. Melissa's carefully constructed persona. The doting wife, the social butterfly, was crumbling, but I wasn't done. There was still Jason. I spent so much time focusing on Melissa that Jason had managed to slip through the cracks. But he'd been lingering in the back of my mind like an unwelcome guest. He knew she was married. He made the choice to get involved. Now it was time to deal with him. I started with the basics. Melissa's texts had given me some information. He worked with her at her firm, held a mid-level management position, and apparently fancied himself the office hotshot. It didn't take much digging to find his LinkedIn profile. His name was Jason Lewis, and his profile was everything I expected. A polished headshot, a smug grin, and a bio filled with corporate buzzwords. He clearly thought he was some kind of marketing genius. From there, I moved on to his social media accounts. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire. Pictures of him at rooftop bars, captions about living his best life, and a few nauseating posts about overcoming challenges with resilience and integrity. Integrity. The guy had been sleeping with another man's wife. The hypocrisy was staggering. I decided to start with something simple. Using a burner email account, I crafted a message to his company's HR department. The subject line was concise: misconduct. Jason Lewis. The email itself was precise and professional but damning. To whom it might concern, I am writing to bring to your attention the inappropriate actions of one of your employees, Jason Lewis. Attached, you will find evidence showing Mr. Lewis engaged in an extramarital affair with a married co-worker, using company time and resources to facilitate their relationship. This behavior not only reflects poorly on your organization but might also constitute a violation of your company policies. I encourage you to review the attached materials and take appropriate action. Sincerely, a concerned individual. I attached screenshots of their text, a few snips of the video, and a detailed timeline. Their affair. It wasn't flashy, but it was enough to make a statement. Step 2 was more direct. I waited until Monday morning, knowing Jason would be in the office. Then I called him. "Hello, this is Jason Lewis," he answered, his voice bright and professional. "Hi, Jason," I replied, my tone calm but loaded with venom. "This is Michael." There was a pause. "Michael," he repeated, his voice uncertain. "I'm sorry, do we know each?" "Melissa's husband," I interrupted. The silence on the other end was deafening. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Look, man, I don't know what to say." "You don't know what to say?" I cut him off, my tone icy. "Did you not know what to say when you decided to sleep with my wife? Or was that all part of your resilient integrity plan?" "Michael, I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't mean." "You didn't mean to." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't mean to send her texts, or meet her at hotels, or film it. Jason, you kept souvenirs." "I made a mistake," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I didn't want to hurt anyone." "Well, you did," I said coldly. "And now you're going to face the consequences." "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice shaky, like a cornered animal. "Nothing," I replied. "I've already handled it. But you might want to start polishing your resume. I should be reaching out soon." I hung up before he could respond. The fallout came quickly. By midweek, Melissa called me furious. "What did you do, Jason?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. "I held him accountable," I said flatly. "Something you couldn't do." Her laugh was bitter and scornful. "You're unbelievable. He lost his job, Michael. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for him? For me?" "Good," I said simply. "You both deserve it. You're just trying to ruin our lives," she shouted, her voice trembling. "Can't you see how petty this is?" "Petty," I repeated, my voice calm but cutting. "You lied to me. You cheated on me. You humiliated me in front of our friends and family. And now you want to call me petty because I won't let you play the victim. No, Melissa, this isn't petty. This is justice. You tore our marriage apart, humiliated me in front of everyone we know, and lied to every single person who cared about you," I said, my voice sharp and cutting. "Don't you dare try to lecture at me about being petty." Melissa started to argue, but I didn't stick around to listen. I hung up and tossed my phone onto the table, the conversation already fading from my mind. I didn't owe her an explanation or the time it would take to hear more excuses. That night, I poured myself a stiff drink and sat out on the back porch, staring into the night sky. Jason was out of the picture. Melissa's reputation was in shambles. The divorce process had started to roll forward. First time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. Might be even satisfaction. It wasn't over yet, but the first cracks had formed, and the weight of everything felt just a little lighter. The next morning, my phone was buzzing with texts and missed calls. Olivia, Beth, and even my brother Colin had reached out. The gist was clear. Melissa wasn't taking her public downfall lying down. She turned to social media to tell her side of the story. Curious, I opened her profile. There it was, a long melodramatic post paired with a photo of her looking tearful and remorseful. It was textbook Melissa, designed to tug on heartstrings and paint her as the victim. Melissa's post, "Sometimes life doesn't go as planned. Mistakes happen. Hearts are broken. But it's how we move forward that defines us. I never intended to hurt anyone, least of all Michael, the man I've loved for so many years. My involvement with Jason was a terrible lapse in judgment during a difficult time in our marriage. I'm not proud of my actions, and I'm deeply sorry for the pain I've caused. I ask for privacy and understanding as we navigate this challenging time." The comments were exactly what I expected. A mix of blind loyalty and hard truths. Some of her supporters rallied behind her, posting platitudes like, "We all make mistakes. You're so brave for owning up to it." But the majority weren't buying it. Olivia's comment was the most cutting. "This wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a 6-month affair. You lied to everyone, not just Michael. Own your choices." Other comments followed suit. "Cheating isn't a mistake. It's a decision. I feel sorry for Michael. You're the one who broke his trust." I couldn't help but smirk. Melissa had played her best card, but the court of public opinion wasn't falling for it. That evening, my brother Colin called me. I answered, already bracing for his bluntness. "You see, Melissa's pity party?" he asked, his tone dripping with disdain. "Yeah," I said, rolling my eyes. Typical Melissa, spinning it like I was some absentee husband who pushed her into cheating. "What a load of crap," Colin muttered. "Were you? I'd post the damn video. Let everyone see the truth." I let out a dry laugh. "Tempting, but messy. I'm not sure I want to go that route." "Messy," he scoffed. "She made it messy the second she started sneaking around, and then she let Jason film it. Come on, man. If anyone deserves public humiliation, it's her." As satisfying as the idea sounded, I couldn't bring myself to take that route. Instead, I chose something more subtle. That night, I posted a single sentence on my own profile. "Mistakes don't last 6 months. Choices do." The reaction was immediate. Friends, co-workers, and even distant relatives flooded my inbox. Some were shocked, others angry on my behalf, and a few were ready to pick apart Melissa's post piece by piece. An old college buddy's message stood out for its bluntness. "She's a clown, man. Good riddance." But the fallout wasn't limited to online reactions. Over the next few days, Melissa's social circle began to unravel. Olivia and Beth reached out furious about how she'd lied to them. "I can't believe I defended her," Olivia said when we met for coffee. "She told us you were distant and didn't care about her anymore. She made you sound like a stranger in your own marriage. But after everything you showed us..." She shook her head, her voice trembling with anger. "I feel so stupid." "It's not your fault," I said, offering her a small nod. "Melissa's always been good at spinning things to her advantage. Knows how to play the victim." "Not anymore," Olivia said firmly. "I'm done with her, and so is everyone else." She wasn't exaggerating. One by one, mutual friends began distancing themselves from Melissa. The image she'd worked so hard to cultivate was disintegrating faster than I could have imagined. Jason wasn't faring much better. Word spread quickly about his departure from the company. And it wasn't a quiet exit. A contact of mine who worked there filled me in. "Escorted him out," they said. He tried to downplay everything, but once HR saw the video, there wasn't much he could say. Both Melissa and Jason had gambled everything on their little affair. Now they were paying the price. About revenge anymore. It was about moving forward. I turned my focus to the legal side of things. Diane, my lawyer, had been meticulous in preparing my case. When we met in her office, she leaned back in her chair and spoke with calm certainty. "This is going to be clean cut," she said. "With the evidence you've gathered, Melissa doesn't have a leg to stand on. She'll get what the law requires us to give her and not a penny more." As she outlined the next steps, I felt something unfamiliar. Control. Melissa had thrown my life into chaos, but now, for the first time in months, I was the one steering the ship. It wasn't just about what Melissa had done anymore. It was about what came next, and I was ready to move forward. Diane slid a stack of papers across the desk. "This is our tie," she said. "With the evidence you've gathered, there's no room for negotiation. She's not entitled to spousal support, and without kids, the division of assets heavily favors you." "What about the house?" I asked. "You keep it," she replied. "If she wants to fight for it, she'll have to prove she deserves it, which, given her situation, is unlikely." I flipped through the documents. Diane had covered every angle, even including protections, in case Melissa tried to delay the process. It felt surreal to see our life dismantled like this, but also freeing. When Melissa got the papers, she called me immediately, her voice shrill. "Michael, what the hell is this?" "It's called accountability," I said flatly. After a brief, tense exchange, she broke down in tears, pleading for another chance. I hung up. I didn't owe her anything. A week later, she was on the porch when I came home, suitcase in towel. "Michael, please," she begged. "I made a mistake. We can fix this. I still love you." I crossed my arms. Detached. "Love? You destroyed what we had. There's nothing left to fix?" Her tears turned to anger. "You're throwing everything away to make a point." "No, Melissa. You threw it away. I'm just cleaning up the mess." Over the next few weeks, she tried every tactic. Apologies, anger, even rallying mutual friends. Most weren't interested. Olivia and Beth made sure of that. Meanwhile, Jason had disappeared. Whatever connection they'd had was severed, leaving Melissa to face the fallout alone. I focused on practicalities, selling the house and finding a new place. The house sold quickly, and I moved into a smaller home across town. It was modest, but it was mine. A blank slate. Our final mediation session was the nail in the coffin. Melissa's composure cracked as Diane laid out the terms. "This isn't fair," she cried. "I made a mistake, but I don't deserve to lose everything." "You're not losing everything," Diane replied calmly. "You're keeping what you brought into the marriage. Unfortunately, that's not much." Melissa signed the papers, her defeat evident. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Her one final text: "Your things are in storage. Arrange to pick them up." She didn't reply. I didn't care. That night, in my new house, I sat on the back deck with a beer, staring at the stars. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. Peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt free. I thought about Melissa differently now. Not with anger or heartbreak, but with clarity. She'd made her decisions and I'd made mine. For the first time, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't carrying the weight of her betrayal. I was just done. Word of her affair was still rippling through our social circle. Friends who tried to stay neutral were pulling away from her. Over coffee, Olivia filled me in. She's been posting these vague pity party captions about starting over. It's her way of rebranding, but no one's buying it. "Why?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Guilt might be bae, or her ego. Either way, not your problem anymore, Olivia said. She was right. Melissa had burned every bridge and I wasn't about to rebuild them for her. Work became my outlet. Myself into projects and earned a promotion a few months later. It felt like a win, a step forward. Colin dragged me to the gym, claiming it was the best breakup therapy. I rolled my eyes but went along. To my surprise, he was right. The physical work cleared my head, and seeing progress in the mirror reminded me I was still in control. "You're killing it, man," Colin said after a session. "Bet Melissa's kicking herself now. She can kick herself all she wants," I replied, wiping sweat from my face. Doesn't change a thing. During this time, I also reconnected with an old friend from college. Ellie Parker. She had moved to town recently for a job in software development and reached out after hearing about my divorce. We met for coffee a few times, and her no-nonsense attitude was refreshing. She had been through a similar situation years ago and didn't sugarcoat anything. The worst part isn't even the cheating, she told me one evening as we sat at a local brewery. It's the way they try to make you feel crazy for being upset about it. I nodded, grateful for someone who truly understood. Exactly. Like I'm the unreasonable one for not wanting to work through it. A steady presence in my life. Not romantic, just a friend who got it. She introduced me to her circle of friends, people who knew nothing about Melissa or my past. It was like stepping into a different world, one where I wasn't the guy whose wife cheated. Olivia pushed me to try therapy next. It's not about her, she said. It's about giving yourself permission to move on. Reluctantly, I agreed. Dr. Kaplan didn't let me wallow. She pushed me to confront not just Melissa's betrayal but the cracks in our marriage that existed long before Jason showed up. Infidelity doesn't come out of nowhere, she said. That doesn't excuse her actions, but it's important to understand what led here. It was tough to hear, but tough to hear. It helped. Slowly, I stopped seeing myself as the guy who got cheated on and started seeing myself as just me. One afternoon, while sorting through the last of my boxes, I found an old photo album. Melissa and I smiled in every picture, arms smiled in every picture, wrapped around each other, locked in moments that felt like they belonged to strangers. I flipped through the pages without emotion, then closed the album and placed it in the donation pile. I didn't need those memories anymore. A month later, I thought I'd finally moved on. My life was steady, work, gym, and a new home that felt like mine. Then Melissa reached out again. Her text was simple. Michael, can we talk? I need to say some things. I stared at it, tempted to delete it, but curiosity won. I replied, 1 hour, neutral location, no games. She agreed instantly. I chose an out-of-the-way diner somewhere anonymous. When I arrived, she was already there. Sitting by the window, she looked different, tired, worn down. The polished mask she always wore was gone. Thanks for coming, she said as I slid into the booth. Let's just get this over with, I replied, my voice flat. She flinched but nodded, gripping her coffee cup like a lifeline. I know I'm the last person you want to see, she began, her voice shaky, but I couldn't let things end like they did. They already ended, I said firmly. There to say. Her hands trembled. I never meant to hurt you, she said, her voice breaking. I made terrible mistakes, but I wasn't trying to destroy us. I leaned back, waiting. Her words felt empty, but I was curious what she'd say next. I didn't know what to do, Michael, she began, her voice trembling as she avoided my gaze. I was lost and Jason. Don't, I interrupted, my tone cutting through the air like a blade. Don't say his name. He's not part of this anymore. This is about you. You made the choices, Melissa. You lied, you cheated, and you destroyed everything we built. Don't sit here and try to rewrite what happened. Her lips quivered as the tears started to spill. You're right, she whispered. Her right, voice barely audible. I did those things, and I hate myself for it. But I'm not here to make excuses. Then why are we here? I asked, leaning back in my seat. My voice was calm, but my words carried the weight of months of anger and betrayal. She hesitated, swallowing hard. Because I still care about you, she finally said, her voice cracking. I always have, and always have. I need to know. Is there any chance for us? A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. A chance, I said, shaking my head. You want a second chance after everything you did. Her tears came harder now, her voice breaking with every word. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know how much I regret it. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. Regret doesn't fix anything, I said, my tone cold and deliberate. It doesn't undo what you did. You didn't just hurt me, Melissa. You shattered everything we built, walked away like it didn't matter. There's no comeback from that. She reached across the table, her hand trembling, as it hovered near mine. Michael, please, she pleaded. I'm not asking for everything, just a chance to show you I can be better. I stared at her hand for a long moment before pulling mine back and leaning away. You already showed me who you are, Melissa, I said, my voice steady and firm. And I believe you, now you need to live with it. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, Pity flickered in the back of my mind. But it was fleeting. Her tears, her regret. It couldn't erase the text, the videos, or the lies she told to justify what she'd done. Whatever pain she felt now, it was hers to bear, not mine. I'm done, I said as I stood up, my voice quiet but resolute. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but it's not me. She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't wait to hear it. I turned and walked out of the diner without looking back. The cool night air hit my face as the doors swung shut behind me. And for the first time in months, I felt something lift, a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. It was over. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of bourbon, the bottle beside me, the stars stretched across the sky, bright and unchanging. I thought about everything, the betrayal, the fallout, the months of chaos that had followed that night at the party. Melissa's voice still echoed in my mind. The way she'd said she was lost, the way she'd begged for a second chance, but her words didn't sting anymore. They felt distant, like a story someone else had told me. And then it hit me. I wasn't angry anymore, not at her, not at Jason, not even at myself. She had tried to rewrite the ending of our story, to give it some semblance of redemption, but it didn't matter. I'd already written my own ending, and it didn't include her. This was my life now. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to embrace it. The next day, I got a text from Ellie. "Hey, a bunch of us are going hiking this weekend. Want to join?" I smiled and replied, "Absolutely." As I put my phone down, I noticed my reflection in the window. For the first time in months, I looked like myself again. Not the guy whose wife cheated, not the angry ex-husband, just Michael. I had survived the storm, and whatever came next, I was ready for it. I raised my glass to the stars, took a deep breath, and let it all go. Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.